Okay, so now we've got the servos on, the servo horns are in there. We've measured these and they're perfect. If you can get them, I had to back mine out a little bit compared to what it said in the manual to get these both even. And you know, I put one on at a time. You want to make it nice and level. You want to make sure, you know, for each servo you get a straight line here through the center of the servo, center of the arm to the end of it, and you can see it also lines up with the elevator in here. You just want everything lined up nice and even and level and perfect. And if you can get it to where you're at center stick here without your servos buzzing like crazy, because there's a little bit of pull on them and you got them buzzing. But I got mine, luckily I was able to get here at 50-50 and my servos aren't buzzing all over the place. That center stick, it pretty much stops the buzzing. That's, you know, pretty lucky. Got your arm centered, everything's level. Then you want to put thread lock on the screws that came with all the little servo arms, and make sure there's the little threaded nut in between the screw and the servo. Get the servo arms on there perfectly centered, and we already know that we've got them all moving up at the same time. Throttle up, we've got all these going, so we already know that our pitch setup is perfect and exactly how we want it. I've also gone ahead and set up the throttle servo right here. Great thing about these OS motors, if you can see in here, there's little notches on the motor that show when it's full low throttle, full high throttle, and in the middle. And you want to measure your linkage so that it's about the length from the center here to the center here. And I went out to the very ends of both the linkage rods. You want 90 degrees here all the way through. And you want to go into your travel adjust, make sure, you know, high throttle, open, low throttle, close. You want to go right, like righty-tighty, low throttle. And you want to make sure you hit the notch and you're not buzzing on the servo. Same thing. Very important that mid-stick, 50%, you're right at the notch. That's right in the center. So check the length of your linkages and make sure these are 90 degrees. Center stick gets you at that center throttle point, and you've got the endpoints programmed. And you'll probably have to go to the very end of these linkages for what you've got here. Next thing we're going to do, put on the swash plate and start measuring and get all the cyclic and everything set up and programmed the way we want it in the radio. Okay, now we've put the head on. We're not setting the pitch and everything all precise just yet, but we're just going to make sure that we've got everything going the right direction. Nose forward, facing forward, tail facing back this way. So elevator servos in the back, you're at 50-50 on the throttle. So first thing we're going to check is the elevator. So when we go forward, we want the swash plate to move forward. So here, let's see. I go forward. So right now when I'm going forward, the swash plate is actually moving back, and if I go back, then the swash plate moves forward. That's the opposite of what I want. So what I have to do in order to make the elevator do the opposite of what it's doing now, press those buttons together to access this menu. Go to Swash Mix. Swash Mix is the menu that you want to go to, and then over here to Elevator, and where it says plus 60, we're going to go now to minus 60. So it'll make it go the opposite direction. The more I get it, the more throw it'll have. You don't want to give yourself too much. You don't want to have binding. You might be able to go up a little higher, but right now we're just going to base it on 60. So we're going to test it again. When we go forward, okay, now we have it doing what we want it to do. When we go forward, swash plate goes forward, back, swash plate goes back. So forward, back, just like when we have the helicopter go forward and back. So now we've got the elevator doing what we want it to do. And now we're going to test the aileron. So right, left. Okay, right now it's actually doing what I want it to do. Right, we want the swash plate to move right. And left, we want the swash plate to move left. So if you can't see, here's another angle. So left makes it go left, and right makes it go right. Forward, back, right, left. So the swash mix is what we want it to do. And right now the pitch is going all the way up. When we want it to go up, all the servos go up. Down on the throttle, all of them go down. So the pitch is exactly what we want it to be as well. There's also the pitch setting here. See earlier when I reversed the servos to make sure they all go up together, and we made sure we did that. But if we made them all go down together and ended up reversing just one of them, then we could just go negative on the pitch now, and if they were, instead of going down when I went up on the throttle, then they would, you know, reverse. So that's how you make sure that you've got your aileron, your elevator, and your pitch going exactly the way you want. Throttle recovery, we're going to turn that into activate, and I'll show you here in just a second what that does. So we're all set in that. For throttle recovery, what we do is there's no throttle cut switch here. So when we power down, we're going to pull our trim all the way back down, and with throttle recovery on, when you press up, it'll go right back to where it's at. So you can trim it to a level. Once you go all the way back down, press up once, and it'll go wherever it was trimmed. So it's just a way, you know, you turn off all the way down. Next time you turn it back on, one click up, and you're back to wherever you're trimmed at. Okay, now we've got all the servos on, ready to go. Haven't started the tail yet. We're going to set up the governor right here, do the initial programming of it. Okay, so what we're going to do, select and scroll at the same time to enter the programming mode when you turn it on. When you go over here, make sure you select aux2 gyro. This is how we're going to set it up. Gear, gear. So we're going to have the gyro actually plugged into the aux2 channel, and the governor is going to be set up on the gear channel. And then you want to come in here, let's see, set your stunt throttle curves. You know, I did 100, 55, 100, 155, 100, and normal throttle curve. Make sure that's linear. And you want to make sure your gear is at 100, 100. 41%. This one I'm going to do for the gyro to start out. And that way you have your governor tied to the gear channel. Governor off, governor on. Let me show you how we do that. So you've got your throttle servo plugged here into the governor. You've got the governor plugged into the throttle channel and the signal plugged in the gear channel. So we're going to start out by applying power to this guy. Okay, so you can see it turned on. You can see when you turn the end here, you can see how the light is turning off and on with the green. It's off when when it goes over the magnet. Green otherwise. So when it's off, and then we're set. Ready to turn it on. And just to test out, make sure it's working, gear off and on. When you turn the gear off, turns red, gear on, turns it on. So that way we have the on-off switch. Okay, next thing we want to do, make sure we're in normal mode. We don't have any throttle hold on, all the switches, everything's on. We're going to train the governor where our throttle low and high points are. So we're going to hold this for about 3 seconds. It's going to start flashing red. And then what we're going to do now, it already knows what the low throttle position is. We're going to go up, full throttle, and then it turns off, basically, and then the green light comes back on. And that way, you can take power off of it, and that way you know you've trained the governor low and high. And that's really all you have to do. It's a pretty simple setup. You just have to make sure you've got the magnets installed correctly and the sensor installed correctly, and we've got that handled already. One thing to remember, how you set it up here on the throttle servo, make sure 50-50 mid-stick measures up with this notch right in the middle. High end is going to measure up with this notch here. But on the low end, you actually want to set it up for a little bit of idle at the low end and the mid trim. So it's going to be up a little bit with, just have the ends of the two lines in the notches line up with each other. Not all the way over, but just a little bit up. So it's going to idle. So it's going to be mid stick right in the middle, high stick right at the end notch, low stick a little bit above. Okay, so don't forget that. Okay, now at this point I'm going to go ahead and open up the 600NG bag with the skids. I'm going to pull the skids off, put the end caps on the ends, make sure you super glue, follow the manual, use all the supplied screws with the washers, and get in the bottom plate of the frame. So there's going to be 6 screws with 6 washers holding it in. Make sure you use thread lock. I've seen skids come off. I've had my own skids come off several times. And then we're going to get these on here, and then we'll move on. Okay, I just got finished installing the skids. Make sure you follow the manual. You've got the 12mm screws right here on the outside. The 2 on the inside are 10mm, and you actually find them. They were left over, and as well were the washers from a previous step. 10mm in a different bag. The bag with the skids will have the 12mm and the set screws, these little grub screws. You want to make sure you have the skids facing forward. Front has the angle right there. You want to get the line facing towards the outside. You don't really have to, that's up to you. Thread lock these guys. Make sure you thread lock before you put them in there. Washer, 10mm here, thread lock, 12mm here. And I like to put my little rubber stoppers on the inside, so I run the skid through, put the stoppers on the inside, and then the little set screws, grub screws, in these little holes right here to hold the skids in place. And make sure you use CA to hold these little end stoppers on the skids. So after that, you've got the skids on.